What's happening, fight fans? Welcome to the Zapata Brand podcast, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, it is a big fight week this week. Two fights going on. September 14th, Saturday night. And who to get better than Kevin Iole? I saved the best for last this week. Kevin Iole from KevinIole.com and the Kevin Iole YouTube channel, which is blowing up like crazy. Kevin, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good. If I could get this ringside thing out of my head here. I don't know why that's over there like that. I'm trying to maneuver my way there. That's better. Okay, we'll go this way. Yeah. Get
Coach
back to
have head movement, did he not?
Coach Diz did teach me head movement. Hence, I have broken nose a bunch of times. But anyway, big fight week, Kevin. You must be incredibly busy this week. I mean, how are you hanging in there?
Yeah, this has been crazy. Like, you have two big fights. Fortunately, they're in the same town, so it makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, a lot of content to do, and I'm kind of a one-man gang now, so it's not like when I was at my Yahoo days where I had a whole team and it could kind of jump in situations like this and pick you up a little bit, right? Now it's all me. So I got to figure out on Saturday night, I'm going to be at the UFC show. How do I get Canelo Alvarez content when I'm not at the Canelo Alvarez fight?
Well, let's start back. Even few weeks ago, was it a week or 2 weeks ago, you had your own tour of the Sphere. Let's get right into the Sphere event here. Something spectacular. Am I not right?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you see what goes on Saturday night at this event, you are going to have your mind blown. The broadcast is going to translate as much of what the experience in the venue is to the fans as possible. Now, the one thing that will not translate is going to be the haptic feedback in the seats for obvious reasons, right? But one of the things that's been set up, George, this is crazy. Let's say there's a slam in the ring. Somebody picks up a fighter and slams them down. When that fighter goes down and the octagon shakes, the seats are going to shake. You're in there. You're going to feel, and it's going to shake.
Are you kidding me?
It's going to shake more closer to the ring than it will further away because obviously the reverberation does,
shit
further. Right? So it's going to be really wild. They're going to have a bunch. So for people who haven't been there, the Sphere is, I think, 560 feet across. So just imagine a basketball and you just cut it flat at the bottom. And it's 560 feet across on the exosphere. And that's sitting on the ground. Now, all of that inner wall is all video wall. And they have a bunch of screens, 16K by 16K screens, right? So just imagine the resolution on that. And they show everything. So what they had to do, they're not going to show the fighters, because if they showed the fights just on those screens, the fighters would be 80 feet tall, right? And that leads to distortion and everything else. So, they're going to pick out two areas off to the sides, and those are going to have the fights on them. Now, they're going to be way bigger than the normal, screens that you would see at a fight, right? They're going to be massive, but they're not going to take up all of that wall. And remember, the Sphere is not in the round. It is theater-style seating, so everybody's facing the stage. So as a result...
okay.
Right. So as a result, that is going to change, things a little bit. There's a dynamic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That makes things... Okay, because I thought it was going to be around. So which begs to my next question. Does this... Do you think this at all would impose a distraction to some of the fighters, or even some of the... Maybe the judges or what have you, because this is totally different. This is really, and the stuff you're telling me now is incredible, but it almost reminds me of like a virtual reality kind of thing. And this is all new. So the fighters are new. Everybody's new. What do you think of that as being a distraction to the fighters?
That's one thing nobody knows. I asked that question, and I watched yesterday. Dana White did a tour in New York of media. So I met with him last week and got the tour. Dana flew to New York and made the rounds in the New York media, did ESPN, did Fox, some other places. And he talked about what was going on. And that's been a very common question. What's it going to be like for the fighters? And Dana admits, we don't know, right?
Oh, Jesus.
I asked Ray Longo that question, right? Ray Longo, the noted MMA coach. And Ray Longo said it's the same for everybody. So as a coach, you just got to get your fighter in the mindset that, okay, we're going to do the best we can do. We got to focus on the guy we're fighting, and we can't worry about what's going on either in the crowd or on the screens or anywhere else. So, I am thinking that the fighters, you're going to be in there, and you know what it's like when somebody's trying to punch you and knock your head off, right? You're a fighter, and you've been in there and done that. Mm-hmm. Your senses are heightened, and you're focused on that threat in front of you. And I think that's what the fighters are going to be. The only thing that concerns me, and nobody can answer this, is like, what if a flash of bright light lands in somebody's eyes just as another person's throwing a punch, right? Mm-hmm. Does that, do you get temporarily blinded for a second? We don't know that.
And also, I would think the heat. There's going to be a lot of heat drawn off of that. That might be another thing.
Well, there's going to be one section of seats that are actually going to the fighters that are going to be very hot, right? So because where all the lighting is and everything, that section, Dana and Craig Borsari, who is the chief content officer for the UFC, they sat in every section in the Sphere, and they watched video and they watched people move in the octagon. So, they didn't sit in every seat in the arena, but they sat in every section in the building. So they have an idea of what it's like from everywhere in the venue. Mm-hmm. And they understand, and they saw the lights, and they understand all that. But, there's going to be part of this that, they're flying by the seat of their pants, right? So some of the stuff that they just not know how it's going to affect everybody.
All right. So let me get into a little bit of the event itself before we get into the fights. Okay. So there is a divide, I don't know if you've noticed it, where one side is saying this is an absolute flop disaster. UFC made a mistake. The other side says Canelo's seats aren't selling. I tend to think I have 2 points to this. And by the way, I took some of the stuff, our private conversation that I used as a info, where you had said that you think this is a long game for Dana White and not necessarily going to have this tremendous windfall here. But for UFC to be a success, and I'm not going to put them up against each other because they're both going to make money, obviously. Whether the quote unquote Al Heyman sellout is an Al Heyman sellout, or the UFC has a legit sellout, they're both going to make money. But what would Dana say? Okay, this is a success for this company, for this event that nobody's ever done. It's a historic event. Nobody's ever done it. And he's the first to do it. What would have to be a success? Would it be record gate? Would it have to be, trending on Twitter? What would you think a success that Dan would say that's successful?
Well, they have, excuse me, they already have a record gate. And Dana texted me last night. So we're recording this on Tuesday. So Monday night, I was texting with him. And he told me that it's looking like they're going to hit 23 million now, right? So they've been saying 21 million, and now it's looking like they're going to hit 23 million. They're ahead of the pace that they normally are on that time of the week in ticket sales. Like on a Monday of fight week, and they've sold out every fight card and at a pay-per-view event for the last, I think, 4 years, with the exception of one, which was in Brazil.
Okay.
And everything else, has been sold out. Usually on Monday of fight week, they're in the 2,000 to 3,000 ticket range left. And then they sell out usually either the day before or the morning of the fight. Last night, and let me just pull my text up while I'm talking to you, George, so I can give you the accurate information. But when I was talking to Dana last night, he said that they were, I want to say 1,400. So let me just look at this just to see what it was. Yeah, they had, as of Monday morning, so I texted with him last night. He said, as of Monday morning, we had 1,400 open seats, meaning seats still to sell. And they're projecting $23 million gate, and they're trending ahead of normal. Now, he also said, and you got to take this next point with a grain of salt, but they are well ahead of pace in terms of pre-buys. Now, virtually nobody pre-buys, right? Boxing or MMA, very few people buy it a week or even 2 days before, right? They buy it the day of the fight. But Dana said they have a significant number of pre-buys already, the most they have ever had. So I think that, it's shaping up both from a ticket revenue standpoint. It's already a record. It's just how big the record gets. And the pay-per-view, I think, is going to reflect an enormous interest because of the venue.
Okay, so take it to the flip side on the Canelo side here. What would he say? Okay, this is a success because you were going up against UFC. UFC is now a juggernaut, and I don't know if it's just, I don't know anymore if you could just have Canelo or a Mayweather or maybe Mayweather, but Canelo on the top of a bill, or back in the day De La Hoya, and then go against a brand like UFC, where the pay structure is way different. Not the top guys getting all the money. What would be a success for Canelo if he said, "Hey, I'm," because it's not going to be too much longer. He's going to be on Mexican Independence Day and Cinco de Mayo. This is going to start to wean away, which is why I think Dana's playing a long play here. What would be a success for him?
Well, I think, a success for him is just going to be a sellout in the arena, right? Which, the MGM guaranteed the gate. So they have it. They have what they want. So, Canelo knows this fight is not going to be a big seller on pay-per-view. This fight would not sell big against Edgar Berlanga on pay-per-view if there was no UFC event going across from it, right? Nobody considers Berlanga good enough to beat him. And so they're not going to buy it, say, oh, what the hell? Like, there was a lot of people that would buy Mayweather fights because they didn't like Mayweather and they wanted to see him get knocked out. And they wanted to see him lose. So they would buy the pay-per-view saying, okay, you know what? I want to see that guy, when he fought Shane Mosley and he almost got knocked down, right? And people bought the fights because of that moment. Like, oh, no, Mayweather's in trouble. That's why they bought. That's not the case with Canelo. And so I think, that for people to be interested in the fight, they have to feel like Berlanga has a legitimate chance to win. Mm-hmm. And Canelo is, minus 100 favorite.
He's what a favorite? I'm sorry.
Minus 1,800.
Minus 1,800.
And Canelo is almost 3-1 to win by knockout. Think about that. He is minus 290 to win by knockout.
Wow, and then plus the other thing with it being $90 for pay-per-view, how are you selling a $90 pay-per-view? I get inflation, but who's putting down $90?
You're just being a pig, right? I mean, that's absolutely all you're doing. You're being a pig. And it's, this is the problem with boxing, right? So when I talk about boxing versus UFC, a lot of the problems are that everybody in boxing is focused on a single night, where, like you said a minute ago, UFC is focused long term, and that allows them. Now, ESPN for UFC, ESPN owns the pay-per-views. So when UFC made their deal with ESPN to be on their networks, they sold the rights. So ESPN bought the pay-per-views from UFC. So as a result, ESPN prices the pay-per-view, not UFC. Up until the ESPN deal, UFC used to price the pay-per-view themselves. So when they were on Fox, the UFC was pricing the pay-per-view, or prior to being on Fox, or whatever network they were on at a given time. That's how they did with the pay-per-views. ESPN now has that right, and ESPN raised the prices 3 times during this tenure that they've had their 5-year contract with the UFC for the rights deal. That ends at the end of next year. But the problem, the UFC is looking at everything as a long-term business. And Canelo doesn't care about Turki Al-Sheikh's business, and he doesn't care about Oscar's business or Bob Arum's business. Canelo cares about his business on that night. And so as a result, there's not that long-term thinking where they're thinking, okay, what is going to be best for the business long-term? Nobody in boxing thinks that way, unfortunately, or very few in boxing think that way. And as a result, George, you just end up having this mismatch. And, they're trying to just squeeze blood from a stone in a situation like this.
Well, let's get to the fights there on Saturday night, though. Let's go first to the Sphere, UFC Noche 306. Well, I like to go with the co-main at first. Alexa Grasso against Valentina Shevchenko. I saw a few interviews that you were doing, and I saw actually Valentina when she was talking on another platform. She is serious about this fight. This is the first UFC trilogy, women's trilogy, in their history. She seems more serious in this fight than she did. Maybe she took Alexis Grasso a little bit lightly before, but this, I think, is the platform for Grasso because it's going to be on Mexican Independence Weekend. What do you see in this fight? And do you see that, is this the ending of this one? Like, let's just say it's a closer fight or Grasso somehow wins, which could be possible. They're not going to go 4. They're not going to go 4. I don't think they're really clamoring for 3, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, they got to give somebody else a title. Yeah.
I mean, like, where do you think this goes from here? Oh, give me your breakdown of the fight, and then say, okay, what happens after for both fighters?
Well, I think, what's going to happen in the fight is, in my opinion, Shevchenko is going to win the fight. I think it's a very close fight, right? I mean, you're talking, George, about, 2 fighters that, both of their fights. Now, in the first fight they had, Grasso wins by submission. Shevchenko had won all the rounds up to that point in the 4th round when Grasso catches the submission. A lot of people said, oh, it was a fluke. But then Grasso actually put out video of her training, preparing for the move that Shevchenko tried, ended up leading to the submission. So it wasn't a fluke, right? She prepared for it. She knew it might come. It did come, and she had trained for it, and she got the submission. But having said that, Shevchenko was winning that fight. Then the second fight went to a decision. I thought Shevchenko won the fight. I scored the fight for Shevchenko. One of the judges scored the last round at 8, which was a horrible score. And if he scores that at 10-9, Shevchenko wins the fight. So, so as I look at that, I go, Shevchenko is 0-2, but she could easily be 2-0. Or it could be 1-1, right? I mean, it's, you're in a situation. I just like Shevchenko to raise her game here. I think Grasso is tremendous, and Grasso has the ability to win this fight. She's talented. She's in great shape. She's a smart fighter. She has everything she needs to win the fight. And I was shocked. I will admit I was dumbfounded when Grasso won the fight the first time. Not quite as shocked that she won the fight the second time. If she wins Saturday night, it's like, okay, Alexa's a very good fighter, right? I mean, I happen to think it's kind of a coin flip, but I lean toward Valentina Shevchenko. I think she has a more diverse game. And over time, and we're getting into, what have they fought? 9 rounds almost on 8 rounds against each other. As we get into, double figures in rounds, I think, the cream rises to the top, and I think Shevchenko's diversity might lead her to the win.
Well, I think Shevchenko won, 7 out of 9, to be honest with you, except in caught in one time. And then, so it's kind of like, okay, the judge on that one scorecard, that was bad. That was really bad. But I'm leaning towards Shevchenko itself. She just looked a little bit different in her interviews and the lead up to this fight. I think she's taking things a little bit more serious and wants to put this one in the books and move on to something else. So let's now go to the main event. Sean O'Malley against Merab. I'll tell you, Kev, I was leaning towards Merab for the longest time. And I know you and Coach Diz were opposite of me there. And then I started to go take a deep dive into Merab's last few fights. And I think I'm switching to Sean O'Malley. Yes,
Coach,
I am. Yeah, Coach Diz and Kevin changing my picks here, although my picks haven't been great.
Shouldn't I have changed your pick on the last fight when we were on opposite sides?
Yes, I know. Kevin, I got to start listening to you more often. I maybe have a couple bucks in my pocket. But yeah, definitely. I think Merab's getting caught as much as he has in the last few fights. The one that really stuck out was the Henry Cejudo fight, where he was getting hit by a very small guy. That's a small guy. Henry Cejudo is very small, great wrestler. And the other thing I didn't realize is how good Sean O'Malley's takedown defense was, being as big as he is. Now, if Merab can get him to the ground, maybe he can. The fact is, Merab's got to get through that fire, and Sean O'Malley's a legit striker here who I think could probably transfer into boxing if he wanted to. Teddy Atlas had even made that suggestion before to me. I know you're leaning towards O'Malley. The odds still haven't come to his favor, though, yet. Vegas never loses.
No, O'Malley's the favorite now.
Oh, has it switched? Because yesterday it wasn't. It was close.
O'Malley is a $1.30 favorite. And he actually, at DraftKings, he was a $1.30 favorite. And let me just look while I'm talking to you. ESPN Bet which has odds on the fights. They had O'Malley favored this morning too when I looked, and I believe it was $1.40 at ESPN Bet. But let me just bring that up, and I'm pulling that up as I'm talking to you right now. So let's see. Here it is. So right now at ESPN Bet, as we speak, 2:30 Pacific time on Tuesday, O'Malley is $1.35 favorite. Merab is plus $1.15 at ESPN Bet. MGM also had O'Malley the favorite. It started with Merab being, I want to say, 8-5 favorite, $1.60 favorite. So it's come full circle, and now O'Malley is the favorite. Any
reason, any suspicion as to why you think?
I mean, I think people just watched the Cejudo fight and remember the Cejudo fight. I brought that up to you when we first talked about it, right? Cejudo is a gold medal winning wrestler, and he is also one of the great fighters in UFC history. I mean, he is going to be on that pantheon of the top 10 or 12 fighters of all time as we sit here right now. But Cejudo is not a striker. That is not his thing. And he was landing very flush on Merab. Now, having said that, right, go back to look at who Merab fought before that. So his 3 fights before that were Peter Yan, the former champion who is a tremendous striker, Jose Aldo, one of the great strikers in the history of MMA, and Marlon Moraes. So Merab fought 3 really good strikers in a row, and he dominated all 3 of them. So I think if you like Merab, you like a long fight in this. If you like O'Malley, you like the under, right? So that's kind of, to me, those 2 sides go together.
So are you looking knockout? I would assume that's where you're leaning towards.
I like O'Malley. I like O'Malley to stop him, right? I think that, but kind of like the Shevchenko-Grasso fight. I mean, I think this is a fight that could go either way. You're going to see Merab just walk through the fight, right? Of course, he does not want to get hit in the face, but he knows he's got to get his hands on O'Malley. He's got to maul him. He's got to make it a really physical, rough fight. If you can wear him down, if you can take his movement away from him, where O'Malley isn't so elusive, as the fight wears on, that's going to play in Merab's favor. So I think that's something that, Merab from the opening bell is going to look to do. Push the pace, make O'Malley defend, make O'Malley move, make him use energy. And even if that means that, that Merab is going to get busted up, I think he feels like, eventually, he's going to get his hands on Sean. And not that he is a great finisher, right? He's not a finisher. He's plus 1,400 to win by submission. He's plus 750 to win by knockout. He's a guy that grinds it out and just wears you down. But, if he takes him down and he hits him with an elbow and drops him, that's the kind of thing that you could see. But I think what he's going to do is he wants to give as much damage to as many places as possible on Sugar Sean's body.
Let me ask you about, I was just going to ask you about one other thing on that fight. Sean O'Malley, if he wins this convincingly, does he now, does UFC put a rocket on his back and say, let's take this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they feel like, he's their big star right now, and I don't think that's, without merit, right? I mean, I think O'Malley is, a guy that you look at and people like him, or some people don't like him, and that's why he's popular, right? But he's a guy that generates attention, and he's a guy that people talk about, and he's a fun fighter. He's outspoken. Look at his performance on the Usman Cejudo podcast, right?
Yes,
talking smack Henry Cejudo. Really funny and good stuff. And so, I think my opinion, and I said this to Dana White last week, I said, I like O'Malley to win the fight. And I said, I think if he wins this bout, I said, you have 2 tiers right now of superstars in UFC history. Conor McGregor all alone at the very top. And then that next level down, you have George St. Pierre, Ronda Rousey, Chuck Liddell, and John Jones. And I think you have those guys in that, in that realm. And I think Sean O'Malley would move up into that realm with those guys. should he win this fight.
Well, that certainly would be something. I mean, I'm looking for now that I've changed my pick, Kevin. I'm looking for a spectacular knockout. That is what I'm sticking with for this fight. Although Merab's very tough, very tough. But I think the size difference when you're getting hit by Henry Cejudo, and flush too. He was getting it flush, and Sean O'Malley's a different.
And Sean, he's a sharpshooter. He gets you right on the chin, right? He's not hitting you here, he's getting you right in the spot where it's going to do the most damage.
It's crazy. I was watching him hit the pads, and I'm like, this guy is sharp. He is right on point, and he's so long. So that's why I think Merab's going to have that problem. Now, if he gets in, hey, that might be a different ball game. But right now, if I had to pick right now, which I'm going to stick with, is O'Malley KO. That's what I'm going with. All right. So let's go right down the street. T-Mobile Arena, Canelo Alvarez against David Benavidez. No, it's going to be Edgar Berlanga. Listen, I'm Puerto Rican. I love any Puerto Rican fighter. Edgar Berlanga kind of don't gut it for me here in this one. I've seen Edgar Berlanga go through the amateurs. I know he was dropped a bunch of times in the amateurs, by the way. And that is going to be a problem, number one. Number two, he kind of I thought was set up for disaster here. Because if you reel off 16 straight victories by knockouts in the first round, that's good matchmaking. That doesn't happen often. And he's not such a he could punch, but he's not a massive, big time Triple G type of puncher at the 60-pound division. This fight comes off as more of I think a gimme fight for Canelo. I think this is the fight this is a fight that they want him to showcase his absolute skills against a guy who's the levels below him, to potentially set up that David Benavidez fight, or for Canelo's ego to say, "Look, you're poo-pooing on me. I'm actually really good." Although, look who he's going against.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really disappointed by Canelo. Really disappointed by Canelo. Like, I have stuck up for Canelo as much, if not more, than anybody in his career, praising him for the level of opposition he shot out. And I go back. And it's 10 years ago now, I admit this, right? But, he fought Erislandy Lara when he didn't have to fight Erislandy Lara. He fought Austin Trout when he didn't have to fight Austin Trout. A year before that, he fought Mayweather when, there was nobody saying, hey, fight Mayweather. Everybody thought he was too young and inexperienced, but he did it. He sought out those challenges. Now, in the last year, look at who he's fought. Jermell Charlo, John Ryder, and Jaime Munguia, and on Saturday night it's going to be Edgar Berlanga. It's getting worse, not better. And not far back from that, he fought Avni Yildirim. And so all of a sudden you're starting to go, what the hell is Canelo doing here, right? He's straying from the thing that made him a star. He's straying from the thing. Now, you could say he's taken advantage of the fact that he can command big money and make $30-40 million a fight, and he's just going to go out there and put appearance fights on. But that hurts his legacy, to my mind. I am not the biggest personal fan of Oscar De La Hoya, right? Mm-hmm. But I will defend Oscar De La Hoya to I'm sorry about that. I just thought I was talking to my friend George, and sorry.
No, go ahead.
But I will defend Oscar because Oscar always was looking to fight the best guys, right? Look at who he fought in his final fight. Manny Pacquiao. He fought Bernard Hopkins when he had no business fighting Bernard Hopkins, right? All these guys, and Oscar constantly, his thing was, if it makes dollars, it makes sense. And give Oscar credit for that, right? And Oscar did that his whole career. Canelo did that a lot of his career, and then it seems like since the pandemic, he's decided, screw it, I'm just going to fight whoever I can get my hands on, and it's really disappointing.
Well, it's funny you said. I had Jim Lampley on the show Monday, and we talked almost so much of the same thing, where his legacy is starting to be a little bit diminished because of how, what he's the choices he's making here as far as fighters. But we also said the same thing, and De La Hoya, same thing, fought people that he even shouldn't. You're right. 160 pounds is not De La Hoya's weight. Maybe 54. But from that 47 down of 30, let's go 32 up to 47. Even when he fought Mayweather at 52, I think he was 52. Dominant guy. Gave Mayweather fits for the first few rounds. Fought everybody, and even fought Manny Pacquiao when he shouldn't have. He shouldn't have fought Manny Pacquiao that day. That guy, even though you think, the size difference, Manny Pacquiao was, he was on fire at that point. And Bernard Hopkins, he shouldn't have fought. Never. And then look, if you do the flip side for Canelo, De La Hoya didn't want Canelo to fight Mayweather. He did, and now it's all of a sudden going reverse, where he's fighting guys that nobody wants to see, and then tack on a $90 pay-per-view rate. This is not something that I think is going to go over well for the Mexican fans, because now they're starting to get a little bit of blowback. Is the only way he gets back to the now, obviously Hall of Famer, obviously one of the top 5, if not top 3 Mexican fighters in my generation. If he doesn't fight David, and I know it's like beating a dead horse, does that diminish what he's done a little bit? Drop him out of maybe the top 3, maybe go to top 6 to 10.
I think I never say not fighting somebody pushes you down. Fighting better people pushes you up, right? So there's that like bottom up inertia that comes when you fight the top people, the elite people, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that since Canelo has fought so many world champions and so many good fighters, we know that Canelo is one of the all-time great Mexican fighters. Nobody's arguing about that, right? Mm-hmm. You'd have to be a hater to say he's not one of the all-time great Mexican fighters. Right. And I'm not a hater, right? I just give my opinion. I'm sure he disagrees with me and isn't happy with me saying what I'm saying, but and Jim Lampley saying what he's saying. But we're people that have covered boxing for over 40 years, and we have watched his evolution from a guy, who said, I don't give a bleep, and he would fight anybody, to now he's being careful who he picks as his opponents. We don't know the real reason why he doesn't want to fight Benavidez. He's a couple times alluded to, well, Benavidez is going to come in and weigh 200 pounds on fight night. But Canelo is also the same guy who was saying he was going to fight at cruiserweight a couple of years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Which has a limit of 200 pounds. And if you fight a cruiserweight, he's going to come in a lot heavier than 200 on fight night.
Right. Let me ask, when you say that, there was I forgot my point here. Oh, do you think it's his smugness towards the media and honestly to some of the fans, like perceiving them to be not knowing the business, that gets him that blowback?
I think Canelo understands that he is a major brand and that he can dictate what he wants to do. He saw Mayweather's success, right, doing that, and he's following that playbook. And so I look at it and I go, when the two people he could be fighting would be Crawford on the lower end and Benavidez on the higher end. His argument with Benavidez, if it's accurate, you can understand it. Hey, Benavidez is too big for me, right? Canelo started as a 139 pounder. Benavidez is a legitimate 175er, and it would not surprise me if David didn't fight at cruiserweight before his career was over, right? I don't think he's going to be at his best when he's at that weight, but I think he will have fights at cruiserweight before. David used to weigh 300 pounds, right? Years ago. David was a big, heavy kid. So I think David will fight. So on that, I understand it. And then his argument about not fighting Crawford, and it was buttressed by Crawford versus Madrimov. Crawford, is too small. What good is it going to do me if I beat a guy, although he fought Charlo, he didn't say Charlo was too small.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. No, I know.
The same weight class, and does anybody out there possibly think that Charlo could beat Bud Crawford?
I don't think Crawford could beat many people right now. He is,
So I mean, I think Canelo's that I think what his. And there's nobody else out there that I think is really, he's fought Plant and, he's fought the guys that are kind of in that other range. So I think he's just kind of, cruising for a while. It's really disappointing. I mean, it really, really is. And what's most disappointing to me, like Oscar fought Steve Forbes, I think in his next to last fight. Steve Forbes was, and Steve Forbes was not the greatest challenge to Oscar, but that fight went on HBO. It was like setting up a pay-per-view fight coming up, right? And that was a fight that people didn't have to, if you had an HBO subscription, you got the fight. And Oscar always tried to do that. That was Bob Arum's influence on him. Go on and where the people can see you and then put your big fight on pay-per-view. And he did that. And then, and here I am defending Oscar, and Oscar is no fan of mine for things I've written about him, right? But I mean, give Oscar credit. He set the standard in this regard. He did that. Sugar Ray Leonard did the same thing.
Right.
But, Canelo is just basically one after the other after the other. And he's charging $90. If he was fighting Berlanga and this fight was on free DAZN and you just got it as part of your DAZN subscription, okay, I get it. Understood. You don't have to fight killers every single time. But, it's fight after fight after fight after fight.
It's getting to be a habit now, and that's what I think is getting to the public at this point. The undercard, actually a pretty good one, I thought. I think it's not bad. I mean, you got two fights there, one with Danny Garcia, Philadelphia's own, and Caleb Plant. Danny Garcia coming off a 2-year layoff against Arizona Lara. Laura's not the same boxer he was before. I don't know what's going on over there, but all of a sudden he's got power out of everywhere. But he is older. He fought, last time he fought, he was in Saudi. But what do you see? Does Danny Garcia have anything left here?
It's hard. I have a really hard time. How do I like this fight to go? Lara, when he was younger, fighting at 54, he was very elusive, a defensive oriented fighter. He's been around a long time. He fought hundreds of times in the amateurs. So he's not moving as well. That happens to a lot of guys, right? Mm-hmm. And he's older, and I'm sure he's probably not training the same way that he used to train. So he's more flat-footed. He's sitting down on his punches, and he used to punch, backing away and doing that. Now he's punching this way, right? He's moving, moving forward as he throws. So I think you're seeing a change in his style. If I had a bet, and I would probably lean toward Lara because, like you say, Garcia hasn't fought, and he's moving up to a new weight class, and we know that Lara has the punching power. But this would be one I would pass because there's question marks on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to lean towards Garcia. So if you want to pick Lara, because I'm terrible. So, but I'm leaning towards Garcia. He's a Philly guy. I'm going with him. Puerto Rican too. So he's 2 for 2 in my book. So I'm going to lean towards Garcia. But again, this magical power that has come out of nowhere from Lara raised a lot of questions for me. But let's just see if Danny Garcia can pass this test. And if he does, definitely probably a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you look at his resume, it's definitely first ballot Hall of Famer.
Who's the first ballot Hall of Famer?
Garcia. I think Danny Garcia is. Yeah, I'm going to say it.
You don't have a vote.
I do. If he beats and gets another belt, I'm voting for him. I'm voting for him. First ballot. I think so. His resume is pretty good. I think. Okay. Well, you know more than I do though. So you're covering it a lot longer.
Let's call his resume up, right? And let's go.
Here we go. Professor Iole, you're gonna school me here. Go ahead.
So let's go. His first 20 fights. First 21 fights. Nate Campbell was fight number 21. Campbell was shot. Kendall Holt, was kind of at the end of the line when he fought.
Kendall Holt was good. Kendall Holt was good. It's a Patterson
Kendall
boy.
Holt was good, but Kendall Holt was at the line when he fought Garcia. So let's start his thing. He beats Eric Morales. Obviously, he beats Morales, who was up. What was he up? 4 weight classes at the end of his career.
Oh Jesus! Okay, go ahead.
His big win is Amir Khan.
Yeah, that was a real big win.
Comes back he beats Eric Morales in a rematch. He beats Zab Judah. Then a fight that I actually picked him to win, Lucas Matisse. And the funny story about that fight was I wrote a column and I did a video and I picked Garcia to win. And Angel Garcia, Danny's father and trainer, he's a little bit crazy and he thinks everybody hates Danny. And so Richard Schaefer introduces him at the post-fight press conference, and Angel Garcia gets up, and I'm smack dab in front of the dais, right? So Angel Garcia is like, he's higher up, but he's looking right down, and he's like, and none of you people picked Danny to win. And I went to Richard like this. Wait a minute, I picked him to win, right? And so Richard taps him on the shoulder and says, Kevin picked you to win. And so Angel, instead of like, good job by Kevin, he goes, well, that guy picked him, but nobody else picked him.
Angel Garcia is a little nutty. He is a little nutty. It's good to see he's doing well. Good to see he's doing well. He was out for a little bit. Well, so we'll keep running down his resume there. Prove me wrong, Kev.
Okay. Then after Issei, then he, Herrera, not that big a win. Rod Salka, terrible opponent. Lamont Peterson, kind of on the back end, very much backhand Paulie Malignaggi. He gets to 33-0 by beating Guerrero and Vargas, loses to Keith Thurman, and then beats Brandon Rios, loses to Sean Porter. I think Danny is a borderline Hall of Famer. He's a 2-division world champion. He hasn't had, what is his best win over a prime guy, right? He said he had the win over Morales, who was on the back end of it. He had the win over Zab Judah, who was on the, Zab Judah was the undisputed welterweight champion many years earlier. Zab Judah had been, I think it was 15 years from the time he was the 140-pound champion, right? So there was a lot of time had passed. I just think Danny didn't have the really significant. So when you say first ballot Hall of Famers, I'm thinking Canelo Alvarez, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. Those are the first ballot Hall of Fame guys, right? Not somebody like Danny Garcia, who did not, he didn't fight the best guys in their primes. But when he did fight him, he lost to Thurman, he lost to Porter. Both of those guys were in their primes. Good fights. They were competitive fights.
Close. I thought that was close.
I don't want this to sound like I'm ripping Danny, because we're talking about him as a Hall of Famer, and that's at a high level, right? But you have to be critical, because you don't just put everybody into the Hall of Fame. And have you seen the Hall of Fame? Have you been there? Hey, look, I make this argument, right? The Hall of Fame is really only as good as the worst person in it, right? Not the best person in it, the worst person in it. So whoever you might think the worst person that's in the Hall of Fame right now, that is the bar. Now, under that bar, maybe you vote for Danny because you say he's better than that person. But I think we want to try to pick the best at a given in their era. And I think Danny was, in my opinion, was a little off. Now, if he wins this title and he defends it, I might reconsider. I guess at the end of his career, I will sit there and I'll do an assessment of it. But, you said he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and there ain't way in hell he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Well, hey, come on. Arturo Gotti's in the Hall of Fame.
Arturo Gatti was one of the most popular fighters in boxing.
They shouldn't put you in the Hall of Fame because you're popular. Coco Beware's in the WWE Hall of Fame because he had a parrot.
Look, I will say this, right? When I say this, and some people are going to go, are you freaking nuts? But Mike Tyson's, when you look at his wins and everything, he would not, if he wasn't Mike Tyson, if he was Joe Blow and had the same resume, right? You would have had to think about Mike Tyson in the Hall of Fame, right? He lost most of his biggest fights, right? Mm-hmm. He lost to Lennox, he lost to Evander, he lost to Buster Douglas. You go through that list of people. But now when you think of him, he changed the business. He was Iron Mike. He was the biggest draw in the sport. He was the youngest heavyweight champion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He brought the MGM into boxing, right? All those things that he did that were away from the sport play a factor into him getting in. Now, I think Mike was a Hall of Famer with his accomplishments, let alone his, the last things I just mentioned. But if he wasn't Mike Tyson, he may not have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? But because it was Mike Tyson, he was, 100%, right? He was in. And I think that's what you have to realize, that the difference between some of these guys.
I think it's because I like Danny. He's right down here in Philadelphia. But also on that card, too.
I'm not voting for him for the Hall of Fame.
Who's that?
Coach Diz.
Oh yeah, thank God Fred got in right away when he got in. How about that? Fred's in. He's in Hall of Fame. I didn't say that's not the low bar right there. That's a high bar. That's a high bar, Fred.
Fred who?
We're starting this again. Somehow I always get stuck in the middle. Oh, so anyway, Caleb Plant also on the card. Kind of just a keep busy fight. Although Mugumbi is undefeated. I don't know. I don't know if that's really. Where does Caleb Plant? I mean, is he looking for Berlanga right after this?
I like Caleb Plant. I mean, I think we have to see who wins, what happens, how things shake out. But I think a Caleb Plant Berlanga fight would be a good fight. The only bad thing from Caleb Plant's standpoint is if you fight Berlanga, we're going to assume he's coming off a loss, and we're going to assume that Caleb is coming off a win. Do you want to be a guy coming off a win fighting a guy coming off a loss? I think you would rather fight somebody coming off a win. I'll tell you a fight, it probably wouldn't get made because he's now a top-ranked fighter, but maybe two. But I was going to say Munguia, but maybe also Christian and Billy would be a good fighter.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say that.
Both of those guys, now they'll probably fight each other, and so because they're both with top rank, but I think that might be, something to take a look at.
Did you say Munguia's with top rank now?
Yes.
Oh, he did leave.
Yeah, he got rid of Freddie Roach. He brought Eric Morales. Yeah, he got rid of Freddie Roach. Brought Eric Morales back as his trainer. He's having a media day Thursday here in Las Vegas at Top Rank Gym. So he will be fighting. He's fighting on ESPN in Phoenix on the 27th. So yeah.
The only reason why I'd say go back to Berlanga after that is because I think Berlanga his profile will be raised significantly after Canelo loss. There's no way he's beating Canelo. So that would I think the money will be there for Plant Berlanga. And after all the nonsense that went on in the press conference, I think the money's there. I think the money talks more than just, am I going to fight this guy and fight that guy? I think the money will make that fight happen. Yeah. Well, Kevin, what do you got going on the rest of this week? You just are writing and getting on YouTube and interviews out the wazoo, buddy. What do you got coming up this week?
Well, I am going to head up to Dana White's Contender Series tonight, and and I will cover that on Tuesday night. And I'm going to write. You will see a story from me every single day on both the Canelo Berlanga fight and the UFC 306. So I'll have a Sean O'Malley. Today I wrote on Berlanga and I wrote on Merab. Tomorrow I will probably have a Canelo story and a Sugar Sean story. And I'm just going to try to provide the absolute best coverage that I can provide about the two fights and what's going on. And then Monday of next week, I'm going to write about the Sphere and how the event played off and the technology. A lot of stuff that I know now I'm sworn to secrecy on and I can't use. So then I'll be able to write that on Monday after the fight. But follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter for Fight Night. And I guess you should be following me anyways, right? But follow me on Fight Night because I'm going to post stuff from inside the Sphere. So we will have, I'll have stuff out there for you guys to see. So people, my on X, I am Kevin I, Kevini, and then on Instagram, I'm Kevin Iole.
Are you going to be doing any fighters after the fights or no? For your YouTube channel?
In terms of videos, I might have, I don't know right now. I'm a one-man band, so it's going to depend on if I get my intern over there and get him to help me shoot something. I might have a video, but I hope to have. I'm going to try to have multiple types of content all week long.
Oh, I'll see if I could get Coach Diz to fly out there for you. Maybe I'll get him to fly out. Well, Kevin Iole, as always, it is a pleasure to have you. Follow Kevin Iole at keviniole.com and his YouTube channel, Kevin Iole on YouTube. Kevin, as always, good to see you. Have a good week this week. Let me know how it goes, how it plays out.
Look forward to it, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.